Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, so today I have Alissa Hollinger on the line, and she's CEO of Hollinger Tax Resolution. Alissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm excited to get into today's topic. So we'll be talking about really resolving tax problems for small business owners. And I know you work with a number of different clientele, but what I want to talk about today is get into some stories and like there's hope on the other side, like as business owners that, maybe somebody got themselves into tax trouble. They started a business, it grew, they didn't exactly know how to manage everything correctly. I mean, there's another side to that. And I know you're helping business owners day in and day out with that. So we'll dive into that topic today. But before we do, let's get into our Mission Matters Minute. So Alissa, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. So that's what we do. Alissa, what mission matters to you?
Oh, fighting the IRS is not what I ever envisioned I'd be doing. In fact, I started in nursing school. And after time, I realized that was not for me. Then nurses work hard, way
Yeah.
harder. I'll take the IRS any day of the week. But I just went into taxes because that was the thing for me. Over the
Yeah.
years, I've seen this dark side to the IRS, and
Mhm.
I've seen the lives that have been ruined. And when it kind of hit home with some close friends that had
Mhm.
an individual commit suicide over taxes,
Mhm.
that was something I'd never even considered before.
Yeah.
And that day, my life, my whole commitment to taxpayers completely changed.
Yeah.
So if I can help one family, one business, one person, I know it sounds cliche, but tax problems ruin lives.
Yeah.
And I've seen it time and time again. And they kind of go hand in hand with other things that people are dealing with. So my goal out of all this is just to truly
Mhm.
help taxpayers, give them some information, help them get what they need, and help them get their life back. That's ultimately what I try to do.
Awesome. And I love bringing mission-based entrepreneurs and executives on the line to really share why they do what they do. And I mean, it comes across in your voice. You're obviously extremely passionate and have a personal attachment to helping taxpayers. So I think it's awesome. One of the things that you mentioned is, everyday people. They're
Yep.
they're also suffering from this, and they also have these things where they need representation. Because I feel like most times the only times like mainstream hears about taxes or anything like this is really like if a celebrity, right? Like because they're the ones
Right.
that are going to get the news. It's like,
Right.
oh, so and so's an avoider or whatever it's called, abstaining from taxes and all these things, and because they're a celebrity it makes the news. But you, and I want you to go further into this at Hollinger Tax Resolution, like you're working with everyday people. Like tell me a little bit more about the business and what you do on the day to day.
Okay. We're basically an emergency room for troubled taxpayers. I mean, that's the nuts and bolts. People come in when they call us. They've often had our name, our number for 12 months,
Wow.
and they're so afraid. They're so overwhelmed. They're
Mhm.
embarrassed. This is not something people talk about.
Yeah.
I would say 1 in 10, maybe 1 in 7 have a
Mhm.
serious tax problem, but people don't talk about it. It's
Mhm.
taboo. It's kind of where divorce and some of those bankruptcy used to be years and years and years ago, and now that's where tax problems are. So you would be surprised at the people that have problems. I have businesses that I work with all over the nation, and especially in my area,
Yeah.
that I know that they're hurting, and
Mhm.
yet their customers don't know, their family members don't know, sometimes their spouses don't know that
Yeah.
they're hurting. So it's people that are just self-employed, it's wage earners, that's somebody that
Mhm.
gets a W-2, it's business owners, it's businesses.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter. I mean, it's little guys that owe
Yeah.
10,000 and people that owe millions of dollars. It's really, and I've helped them all at
Mhm.
all different facets. And I, and one thing that I've noticed across all of them is they're always good people.
Yeah.
I think 2 people in my whole 20 years have been what we would call true people that are trying to defraud the government, and they stick out in my mind very well.
Two, a
Everybody
whole
else,
two.
2 people. Now there may be more,
Of
but
course.
these people, I specifically know they are either they're tax avoiders, tax protesters, whatever you want to call them.
Mhm.
But everybody else have just been good people trying to live their life, trying to run their business, take care of their family, and
Mhm.
they somehow end up in tax trouble.
Yeah, I get that as well. So I get that not everybody, and I'm glad you brought out the number because I was gonna, put you on the spot for a percentage, but that gives an example, like how many years you've been in this business, and maybe you can count on one hand or maybe two hands if you really dig deep on how many people are doing this like very systematically. Like it does, that's not the case. So
Yeah.
there's a couple of different ways I want to approach this topic. I want to approach it, of course, from the just the general everyday taxpayer. Maybe we start there, and then let's jump up a little bit in terms of being and complication, because we know the business owner versus the W-2 wage earner, or someone that's maybe just has a 1099. They were driving Uber and they didn't know they owed something, and now they
Right.
got this thing where they're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I was over here, I just didn't even know. And that piles up. Like I've heard so many stories now that we have this gig economy, to where
Mhm.
you might have a regular job, but you're making other money on the
Right.
side doing something else. So let's start with just your everyday taxpayer. How do that? So let's approach it starting there. Like, how does
Okay.
that like normally evolve into a tax issue? Let's start there.
It's almost always some moment, a crisis. It could
Hmm.
be a divorce, a death in the family, the loss of a job. Sometimes, people just make stupid mistakes. They don't
Yeah.
have somebody. And when I say stupid mistake, it's because,
Yeah.
they don't know, or they try to figure it out themselves, or maybe they've got some guidance. I call
Hmm.
it the barbershop talk, where they just don't know. And I
Yeah.
think there are some marketing, some concepts out there that have maybe tried to make the tax system seem
Hmm.
easier than it really is, but it is complicated. It's
Yeah.
complicated for professionals.
Well,
So
financial education, if we just look at something like compound interest and our savings rate in this country. So let's start this part with just saying finance in general can be tricky if you're not doing it day
right.
in and day out. So let's start there, and then let's add tax code to that. So it's like
Right.
we're trying to work with the personal budget, then let's add tax code to this. I'm sorry, go ahead. I just had to set the table with that
Well,
one.
and the tax rules have been changing so much.
Hmm.
We've had new tax forms for the last every year for the last 4 or 5 years. We
Yeah.
have tax rules in the middle of a season. Taxpayers really get the
Hmm.
the shaft because they can't even plan. They can't utilize the rules. It's frustrating for taxpayers. It's frustrating for professionals as well. So usually when a taxpayer ends up in trouble, something's usually kind of knocked them down. They don't know how
Hmm.
to get up. Nobody talks about this piece, so they may say, hey, who does your taxes? But when it's refund time or tax time, they're silent, or they're even just going with the flow,
Hmm.
because they don't want anyone to know they hadn't filed a tax return. And that's usually
Hmm.
what happens with taxpayers. Something happens, they go to file or prepare the return, and they owe a lot of money and they
Yeah.
can't pay it. So they
Hmm.
panic and they don't pay, or they
Yeah.
don't file. That's the number one mistake that most taxpayers make, is they don't file their tax return. I
Yeah.
understand the logic of why they don't file, because they can't pay,
Hmm.
and they always have the intention to get it right next year. Well, then next year happens and they hadn't
Yeah.
filed the year before. Then it just keeps
Yeah.
spiraling to where all of a sudden you'd be surprised. People have gone 15, 10, 20, 30 years and they haven't filed a tax return.
Mm.
And they're just paralyzed with fear. They're just
Mhm.
waiting, walking around with this big cloud over their shoulder because
Yeah.
they don't know when the IRS is going to come knocking.
Okay, so let's next side of this. I want to now tackle from the business owner's
Okay.
point of view, and then we'll talk about like there's hope on the other side. So this isn't for everybody watching the interview. This isn't all doom and gloom, but I do want to set the stage for maybe some people that are watching that are maybe going through some things right now, just to know that you're not alone. Like it's not that you had this like intention of being this person, like that this is a common thing that's happening that Alyssa's
Yeah.
mentioning. So this isn't all doom and gloom. We will get to, I promise, the hope on the other side part. But I want to paint the picture now for business owners. So how does that sometimes happen for business owners?
It's almost always cash flow problems.
Hmm.
If you're a new business, a lot of business owners, they're so good at what they do, but they don't
Yeah.
know the first thing about the accounting or the payroll taxes or the responsibilities. And maybe they buy a lot of equipment, and all of a sudden now they can't pay their taxes. It's almost always payroll taxes.
Yeah.
Not all, I shouldn't say always. It's about 75% of the time payroll taxes are what get a business in trouble.
Hmm.
And then you have the income taxes, depending on how they've set their business up and everything. But it usually starts because there's just not enough money.
Yeah.
And one of the hard conversations that I have to have with business owners at times is your business viable?
Hmm.
Because if you can't pay your current taxes and run your business, that means you don't really have a business that you should be in. And that's
Mm.
probably the hardest conversation that I have to tell a taxpayer is, I don't know if this is going to make sense. You
Yeah.
know, you're good at what you do, but owing the IRS is one thing, but being told that maybe your business isn't
Yeah.
going to make it, that's worse than telling somebody they owe the IRS.
Hmm.
And it's my job to have those tough conversations so I can help them. It doesn't do anybody any good if
Right.
I sugarcoat things. But for business owners, it's
Mhm.
almost always cash flow problems. They
Mm.
take short-term loans from the government. Again, with the intention, I'll catch it up next week. Maybe they
Yeah.
had a big job that they were waiting for payment and it didn't
Hmm.
happen. They got to pay their employees. So their
Yeah.
employees keep working. And so what do? They borrow from the government and then they
Hmm.
can't pay it back. And the penalties
Mm.
for doing so are so steep. The IRS takes payroll taxes more seriously than any other type of tax that they
Wow.
collect. So, and it's probably, I'd say 75% of all taxes collected in our nation are payroll taxes. So
Hmm.
they really, really, they penalize taxpayers hard. They go after them. They close businesses.
Hmm.
It's the number one issue that I would say most small business owners really don't understand the magnitude, and then they end up in trouble.
Yeah, and just to put some, I hesitate to give you an example with numbers, but I'm going to do it anyway. So let's
Okay.
just say, for example, just to flesh out what you're saying a little bit more in terms of the business owner, because that is a key concept and it's a hard one. Is like, let's say that the business owner is not paying taxes, they're making, and we're going to use very simple math, $10,000 a month, and they need 8,000 of that to live on, and the other 2,000 is covering just hard expenses for whatever their profit is. So they have exactly zero. Well, they
Right.
don't have zero, right? Because they owe taxes on that money. So
Right.
now what happens is that's where you may be making money, but you may still not. You have to figure some things out. Like you still may not have a viable business. Is that what you're saying? I just want to put a little bit more behind that.
Basically. So
Yeah.
when a business has employees,
Yeah.
they are usually paying the net payroll. So
Yeah.
when they're calculating expenses, they're looking at net payroll, and then this
Hmm.
other money, they're holding it in trust. It's
Yep.
the money that they've withheld from their employees, and it's sitting there, and they're supposed to turn that over to the IRS. Well,
Yeah.
because they're not bringing in enough overall to cover
Hmm.
gross payroll, which is the employees the part and then the taxes,
Yeah.
they end up in trouble. It's usually because a company they had either their income is just too low to cover everything,
Hmm.
and then they have this money set aside for the taxes, or supposed to set it aside
Hmm.
and turn it over to the IRS. Well, often what happens is they're just running their paycheck or
Yeah.
their business by what's in their bank account. And then they realize, oh my gosh, I'm not even covering the taxes that my
Hmm.
employees owe, let alone the income taxes for the business.
Yeah.
So they usually end up upside down because they're just not making enough money. Or maybe they're just not getting paid fast enough
Hmm.
to make all of their obligations.
I'll just say your example was way better, and I was expecting that. Mine was like trying to bring it to like kindergarten. Like you have two crayons, and you need to like one crayon goes to Uncle Sam. You get to keep a crayon, and
Right,
if
right.
Uncle Sam didn't get his crayon, then you're in trouble. That's where I was taking it.
Well, and it's a lot of times people are
Yeah,
not prepared for the payroll tax side of things.
yeah,
Most people understand income, expenses, and what's left over I pay taxes
yeah.
on. They're just not prepared for that part in the middle when they
Hmm.
have employees. And
Hmm.
often it's when employees or when businesses have employees, that's usually when they get into trouble. If they
Yeah,
don't have employees, then it's just an income tax thing. It's
yeah.
not a payroll tax thing.
Awesome. All right, so now let's progress in the conversation to the other side. Like there is hope, there is something light at the end of this tunnel when you do start working with the IRS, because ultimately I know that like they want to collect, I'm guessing, and number
Hmm.
two, and
Hmm.
and number two, they want you to continue to run your business ultimately, or to keep working and to keep paying taxes, right? So they don't want you
Right.
completely off the radar. So it's my impression that they do want to work with you, and that there are routes for any situation out there, because I'm guessing everything's happened at this point. Am I off on this?
No, you're right. You're
Mhm.
right. The IRS, there's a couple of things. One, if a business goes out, now we have employees without a job. We have
Yeah.
taxes that are not being collected. We have sales taxes. It's so much bigger than that.
Mhm.
So there are programs that are available to help a business get back on track, to help a business, make arrangements, resolve these
Yeah.
issues. But ultimately, the taxpayer and the business owner, they have to understand that it's something that it's usually going to be out of their level of
Mhm.
understanding. The IRS is like any other creditor. They want their money. I mean,
Yeah.
plain and simple, they want their money. That's what our country's run on. They have a
Mhm.
job. It's to collect money. It's not their job to make sure that they're collecting what you actually owe, because
Mhm.
they may be over collecting. I had
Mhm.
a situation. I'm still in the middle of finishing it out, but we're like 95% done.
Mhm.
It was just two wage earners, and I say that he had a little bit of stuff on the side, but
Yeah.
the IRS was hammering them for $230,000.
Hmm.
It wasn't the IRS's job to make sure that that was the right amount. That's what was on the books. That's what they were
Yeah.
going after, and the taxpayer finally, at the last minute, gosh, they decided they should probably talk to somebody. So they
Wow.
called me. And I got to look in and I went through everything, and they only owed $40,000.
Stop.
Now,
That client, tell me that client, you're on their Christmas list for the
oh,
rest of
they
their
are so
life.
happy. I mean, they're like night and day. But they didn't understand why they owed, so how they could
Yeah.
possibly owe that much money. And it was due to investments and retirement. They didn't
Yeah.
understand. They had literally taken a distribution of over 200,000 from their retirement. Now they're
Mhm.
in their 60s. They can't
Mm.
afford to pay that money,
Yeah.
especially money they don't owe. So
Mhm.
when I'm dealing with the revenue officer, those are the people that come to your door.
Mhm.
That's way worse than calling the service center. So these people with the badge, they come to your door, they're ready to take your stuff, they're threatening to clean out your bank accounts, and
Wow.
they will. They do it, they have that power. It's
Mhm.
not their job to make sure that what they're collecting is what you actually owe. That's the
Mhm.
taxpayer's responsibility. So many times a taxpayer says, "Oh, well, surely the IRS knows I don't owe 300,000." No, they don't. That
Yeah.
cog is going, and something has to stop it. So
Mm.
usually with taxpayers and with business owners, there is hope there, but
Yeah.
they have to do their part. They have to, if they don't understand, if they don't know the rules, if it's over usually even 10,000, they need to get somebody. They need
Mm.
to get help to make sure that what they're paying is what they actually owe, and
Mhm.
to make sure that they're getting all of the rights that are afforded to them in the taxpayer bill of rights that the IRS has
Mm.
to follow. Now, we all know that employees are part of the IRS. We
Yes.
have rogue employees. It doesn't matter if it's the IRS, it could be Walmart, it could be Target, it could be my office.
Better not be
Ho-
Mission Matters if you're watching
hopefully it's
this.
not my office, but you have an employee that just decides, I don't like you, I'm not going to help you, I'm going to stick it to you. And IRS employees do tend to be jaded. They
Mm.
hear it all the time. They're like, yeah, 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 yeah. You don't want to pay your taxes. Well, nobody wants to pay their taxes.
Yeah.
It's just part of life. But
Mhm.
usually for taxpayers, there's hope there. There's always, I tell all my clients and anybody, whether I work with them or not, there's always a solution. You may not like it,
Yeah.
but there's always a solution.
Mm. Awesome. And let's go further into some. I like that you said this, by the way, that there is a solution and that people do, that the IRS does want to work with you, because the ramifications of them not means less money on their end. And I don't know their
Right.
metrics, and we're not getting into that, but I'm guessing that the people that are collecting have their own, thought process on what they need to be collecting in terms of getting through cases and things like that. I'm sure they have their own
Right.
things, but that aside, like, what does that look like when you start maybe entering the process? Because I feel like the first step is sometimes the hardest with these things. Like, what does that look like for a taxpayer that maybe needs some help?
What I've been told that the
Mhm.
hardest part of all of it is calling me
Yeah.
or calling anybody, because
That's the first
this
step then. That's the first step.
it's the
Mhm.
hardest because you're admitting I need help, or
Mm.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
Sometimes calling the IRS, but usually
Mhm.
what I've had people say, I'm just talking to you has helped, because at least they have a strategy or they have a
Yeah.
plan. They're not out there just floating around trying to figure this out on their own.
Mhm.
And I've often said, "Oh, don't get so excited yet. We're just getting started. I still need you to be involved and to be engaged and to
Yeah.
help me get this." But they're carrying around this weight. So
Mm.
the first thing is, when they get notices, they need to read them. If they don't understand, and it doesn't matter if you owe $300,
Mhm.
5 million. 200, it doesn't matter. If you receive a notice from the IRS and you don't understand it, that's the first step, that you either call the IRS or you get a
Mhm.
professional. I mean, it's just, I say it's really that simple, and it is.
Mm.
If you will start that process,
Yeah.
then you'll either get through the IRS or you won't.
Mhm.
You'll find a professional that works, hopefully for you, and does what they're supposed to.
Mhm.
And if they can't help you, they'll let you know. They should let you know.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are professionals out there that just want to make money. I mean, obviously we have to make money to be
Sure.
in business and to be there, but there are, just like in any industry, there are unscrupulous people that
Mhm.
I probably would not want my grandmother working with.
Yeah.
And then there are people that I would say, you could have my child and work with my child because I trust you that much. So it takes all of us, I guess, to make it work. But the hardest part is just
Mhm.
getting started, and whether it's with the IRS or with a
Mhm.
professional.
And so now let's go a little bit further down that user journey. And obviously, I don't want to oversimplify this. So I'm not saying the specific step, because some things are going to happen. And depending on how much you owe, the process, you're a business owner, individual. I mean, I know it's tons of complexity there, but like take me just a little bit down, maybe generically or high level, through what a journey could look like working through this system, just to process.
Okay. So if you're working the IRS, we'll start with
Mhm.
the IRS. They have um, a procedure that determines, once a debt is determined legitimate,
Mhm.
the whole thing starts with an IRS notice call, and I would say CP-14. That's what it
Yeah.
is now. That's what it's been for years. Maybe someday they'll change that notice, but
Yeah.
nothing can happen with the IRS till that one notice kicks off the whole process, and then
Mhm.
they just have a roadmap that they follow. So
Mm.
for a taxpayer, the first thing is, if they have a balance due that they can't pay,
Yeah.
then it's figuring out what they can pay. We
Mm.
have to figure out what they really owe, not what the
Mhm.
IRS says they owe, but what they
Yeah.
really owe based on the correct rules and based on what's going on, not just what the IRS has figured out on their own. So we
Mm.
figure out what the taxpayer really owes. Then we have to figure out where they are in the collection process with the IRS.
Yeah.
Every little step that the IRS takes, there are taxpayer rights along the way. And
Mhm.
if the IRS goes too far, and often this happens when taxpayers ignore the IRS,
Mhm.
they have missed there's always an easy way to a hard way. So they're
Yeah.
missing opportunities to kind of say, halt to the IRS, stop. I don't agree with you, and to kind of back it up. Well, often
Mm.
what happens is taxpayers miss these opportunities. So by the
Mhm.
time they come to me, I have to work even harder to protect them and to stop the process, because
Yeah.
they've missed these opportunities that are built right into the system. And
Mhm.
I understand taxpayers are terrified. The
Yeah.
IRS has all this control, and the stuff they do is horrific, and it's all true. And
Yeah.
there are good people there that will help taxpayers. But once we figure out what they have to pay, what they
Mhm.
owe, what they can afford to pay, then we can figure out what what program is going to work to
Yeah.
get them back on track. The IRS has programs, um, and tools to help
Mhm.
taxpayers. Are they easy? No. Is it the
No.
IRS's job to help you figure that out? No.
No.
They're there, they have it, they dump it in your lap. It's the taxpayer's responsibility to sort it out and
Mhm.
figure out what makes the most sense to get me back on track and to help me
Mhm.
take care of my business or my family.
Yeah.
Once we figure out what program makes sense, and then we develop a process, in essence, to implement that strategy
Mhm.
and get them to the other side.
And this is part of what you're doing. So the whole thing, Hollinger tax resolution. So from that first call all the way to thinking about like what's the correct program, all the way to working, like you're helping through this whole process. Am I right on that?
We're usually the driving force. That we're almost like I always say I'm like a bull in a china closet. I'm pushing it through, I'm making stuff happen. I tell folks, when we work together, I have some people, this is probably not something to brag about, but I've made grown
Please.
men cry, because I'm like, you're going to do this. I can help you.
Yeah.
We're going to do this together. I lock arms with them, and I kind of drag them
Of
along
course.
until they can start to see
Yeah.
that there's, light at the end of the tunnel. Most of the time, taxpayers, like I said, they're good people.
Mhm.
They just want to know, can you help? Will you help me?
Yeah.
And I usually know in about 30 minutes whether or not I can help somebody. And if I can't help them, I let them know. I
Mhm.
don't I don't want to work on something that I don't create any value. That's
Yeah.
not any fun for me. I like to win. I like to win big.
Hmm.
So if I'm working with somebody that I'll say, hey, you know what? You just need to call the IRS. Here's what you need to do. Here's what you need
Yeah.
to ask them. If you were to pay me, you'd be better off just to pay the IRS and be done. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense for us to work together, but I give them guidance because even the people that don't need my help, I want them to win, and they do need
Hmm.
my help. It just doesn't make sense for them to pay for it. So
Yeah.
I try to help them, but there's so many opportunities for taxpayers if they would kind of get out of their own head and
Hmm.
just start to ask for help.
It's great. And so the way I was going to brand you, Lisa, was to say you're more of a tax concierge where you make the process as nice as possible. I wasn't going to say you make grown men cry. I was going to say concierge.
Well, it's
That's where I was going with your branding, but it's okay. Like maybe they do need to be put in the headlock and say, "Come on, make that call." Whatever they
well,
need, the point is you're there.
if you're going to work with the IRS,
Yeah.
I have people all the time that try to, it just even in the business world, they'll
Yeah.
say, "Oh, well, if you don't do this," I'm like, "Dude, I work with the IRS. You don't scare me." So, I mean, I work with big guys, little old ladies. I mean, I work with them all, but my passion is so strong that I
Hmm.
tell folks, if you're not serious about resolving this, this may not be the place for you because I'm ready to I'm locked and loaded. I'm ready to go. And I fight to the end. If I don't think that I can do that, then I don't
Hmm.
take the case. It doesn't make any sense. Again, I like to
Yeah.
win, and I like to win big. And I like to see my taxpayers, my clients, when they come
Yeah.
in, they are so emotionally exhausted from this weight.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget this little guy. And he's still a client. He's near and dear to
Mm.
my heart. And when he come in, he had lost everything. He'd had a heart
Mm.
attack. He'd been in the hospital. His wife had got rid of all his stuff. He
Mm.
owed the IRS hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Mm.
And when we got him all cleaned up, and I mean, his tax problem was cleaned up. We got it fixed
Yeah.
up. He ended up owing nothing. So it was pretty amazing. He come in one day and he was dressed to the nines. He had his
Mm.
hair done and he had cologne on. And I almost didn't recognize him. And he's like, man, I am a sexy beast. Now, to hear a 60-year-old man say that, but it was, I mean, the transformation
It's
was
awesome.
unbelievable. And
Hmm.
and I see that all the time. People that actually they've been there, they're
Hmm.
desperate, they're miserable,
Hmm.
and they've lost everything, whatever it is. And then you get them to the other side, and they have there's huge weight lifted. I mean, they're different people. It is really that's why I do it because when I see people get to the other side,
Mm.
it almost sometimes it just makes me want to cry when I think
Yeah.
of the change in these people.
Oh, what a great story, and thank you for sharing that. And maybe your new tagline is I work with the IRS, dude, you don't scare me. Like I'm I'm feeling that. I'm feeling a little I got a little sweat going over here. I'm feeling a little watch it. And then you have the crosshairs for the like
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
But seriously, this is, I mean, great stories and just great content. And the main thing here and the message that I know that you and I were talking about, we wanted to convey through this interview was really just to let people know that are maybe going through some things that there is hope. Like there's another
yes,
side of this, and that there are processes like, and you're also not alone. So you're not
right,
alone in terms of like going through these challenges, and especially thinking about the last couple of years, what's been going on. Just we're recording this in 2021. I mean, there's a lot of people that were affected, and we get it, especially on the
right,
business side. I can't tell you, there's some wins on one side, but a lot of people I've talked to, they lose a couple key clients. People are going
right,
bankrupt. The businesses are
right,
going bankrupt. Like entire models are shifting. So taxes, all that's a big part of it. So sometimes that's not the number one thing to consider, like if you're trying to just survive. But
right,
the point is when you do have the ability to mentally like think about it, and when you are ready, that working with a team like Alissa's or finding help or doing what you have to do out there, like does make sense because there is hope. Like that's the
right.
main thing we wanted to convey. Uh,
Absolutely,
so,
absolutely.
Alissa, I'll just say this has been awesome. I learned a lot, had a lot of fun, of course, as always, and I knew this would be fun working with you today. So, that being said, what's next? I mean, what's next for you? What's next for Hollinger tax resolution?
Well, as we are finishing up the tax season and we're getting ready for another tax season, we're really just helping taxpayers. There's a lot of IRS enforcement going on, and
Mhm.
we're gearing up because the IRS has been approved some more money, and they're going to be hiring new agents. And when they hire new agents, these people are ready to go. They just don't know
Yeah.
what they're doing. So it does make it a little bit tougher for taxpayers. So we're just gearing up to help as many people as we can.
Mhm.
And the Christmas time is for some folks is a really tough time to deal with uh, the tax problems. And if it's tax time, it's
Yeah.
hard because taxpayers, they haven't dealt with it and they don't know where to go. But
Mhm.
really, tax problems are year round. We work with
Mhm.
all the time. I mean, I have people say, "Oh, I thought tax season was done." I'm like, dude, I'm doing non-filers for years on
Yeah.
end. So we work all year round. There's no time that is, unless I'm on a cruise or
Mhm.
vacation, then I might have to put them on hold for a minute. But
Yeah.
then the next step is we're just keep doing what we're doing. We're
Mhm.
constantly training, learning, and we participate in a lot of professional groups. So we have the inside scoop of what's
Mhm.
going on in the IRS, so we can be prepared for whatever is coming our way. Which
Yeah.
usually is important because taxpayers often they don't usually know what's going on
Mhm.
until after the fact, where the whole time we're already seeing the shift, we know what's going on,
Mhm.
and we're preparing myself and our team so that we can help as many people, because there's at least 15 million people have tax problems. It's a
Mm.
lot. I can't
Yeah.
help everybody, but the ones that I can help, or
Mhm.
that I do get to help, their lives are changed forever.
Fantastic. So, Alissa, if somebody's watching this and they want to learn more and to connect with you and your team, what's the best way for them to do that?
Oh, with technology, life is everywhere. So we have a website. It's
Mhm.
501tax.com. Very, very easy.
Mhm.
And we have a fantastic Facebook following where we are constantly posting what's going on, try to educate taxpayers
Yeah.
and our clients. There's email. You can call. That's probably the best way, is just to call us
Mhm.
at, can I give my phone number? Did I
Oh,
say that?
absolutely.
Oh,
Mhm.
it's 501-725-2626. And call us, email,
Mhm.
call us, whatever makes sense for you. But we've
Mhm.
got, let's see, website, email, which is Alissa at
Mhm.
501tax.com. And we've got our Facebook page, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. And I just say, find somebody, even if it's
Yeah.
not me. I think I'm the best, but find somebody that can help you, at least let you know where to go next.
Mhm. No, that's great. And that's a great message. And we'll definitely put all that information in the show notes as well, because we want to make it really easy for our listeners and viewers to just go down the show notes, click the button and go to the website and have a conversation with Alissa and her team. So first off, for everybody watching, really appreciate you tuning in today. If you're a first time viewer or listener, don't forget, hit that subscribe button. We have many more mission-based business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives coming up, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Alissa, I'll just say this has truly been a pleasure. I'm having you on the show today. I learned a lot. I learned a lot of different resources. I'm sure my viewers did as well. So thank you for bringing all that value to the show today.
Thank you for having